We're here at Jazz Live with Benny Golson. Benny, thank you so much for being here in San Diego and coming to play for Jazz Live.
Well, it's good to come again. I haven't been here in a while, so I'm enjoying it.
When was the last time you were here in San Diego?
I think I played the museum with Holly.
Mm.
Yeah, that must have been about 2 or 3 years ago.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I noticed on your website, which is www.bennygolson.com, correct?
Right.
That just in recent days you've been in Rome, you're here in California, and then going to Spain. How is the traveling these days? Do you travel quite a bit still in your career and playing jazz around the world?
I'm trying to cut down on it a little bit. I'm still hoping somebody comes up with the thing that Captain Kirk had on Enterprise, and they can just beam me up to wherever I'm going. No more security and all of that.
Use the transporter to,
yes.
to take you right
yes.
there. Is traveling is quite a grind, right?
The traveling gets a little hectic sometimes, but the plane never does.
Mm-hmm.
Once I get there, it's fine.
And in your travels, do you get to play with a lot of different people? Does
yes.
that probably, I would imagine, is an
yes.
exciting part of it?
Sometimes it's very rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's not.
Right.
But most of the time it is.
On your recent trips, like coming from Rome, who were you playing with there? What was that engagement?
Kirk Lightsey was our pianist. Doug Sides was our drummer. Reggie Johnson was our bass player. Now, of course, they all used to live in the States,
Mm-hmm.
but now they're over there. And they all have bald heads. I told my audience, I said, you notice my rhythm section, they're all bald. And then I put my hand on my head and I said, I'll join them a little later.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about your 2004 release, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there have been a few reissues of some other sessions since then, but Terminal 1, it seems to be your latest release of original material and works. Can you tell us a little bit about that work? How did it tie in with the movie Terminal 1?
It would have never happened had Steven Spielberg not called me. But he called me and asked me, could I participate in this new film with a small speaking role with Tom Hanks? I didn't have any idea what it was. And I told him yes, of course. And we shot it in Montreal. But before I got there, he called me and said, what kind of piano? He said, I'm creating a nightclub scene for you. And it was an old airplane, abandoned airplane hangar. And he said, what kind of piano would you like? Now, I had never met him, and I didn't know what he was about. I said, a Steinway 12-foot grand. And when I got there, it was there. Usually they'll have a trailer for the musicians. He had a trailer for each one of us to kill for. I told my wife, wouldn't it be great if we could take this trailer back to 96th Street and live in it?
And so how was the experience of making a movie? Was it the first movie you had been in?
The very first. And my wife was in it too. She was one of the people sitting at the table, you know. And I didn't know what it was about until I got there, because he sent me a script, and it was like a screen test, which I did in New York. And I did it, and they said, oh, great. But they saw the look of concern on my face, and they said, well, what's wrong? I said, well, that's not exactly the way a musician would say it. So they did it over. And I did it that way, and they sent it to him, and he said, great. But the picture was about that film, the photograph taken in '57, I think it was, with many musicians on it. And I happened to be on there. And Tom Hanks was trying to get my autograph throughout the film. That's what it was all about, because his father had been a jazz fan and gotten everybody's autograph. And his father died, and his father had gotten everybody's autograph except Benny Golson's. And to complete it, he wanted to get my autograph, which happened at the end of the film. Mm-hmm. But everything leading up to that, you'll have to see it.
Well, and the music that you recorded for that.
Is that me?
Oh my God!
Okay, can you turn it off?
The music that you recorded for that.
My wife. Hello?
Well, that you better get.
You know where I am right now, sweetheart? I'm right in the middle of a television and radio interview. I'm sitting here with the people. I'll talk to you later. All right, bye-bye. She's apologizing all over the place. I should have had it off.
It's all right.
That's our biggest problem, then. We're doing all right.
I know exactly.
I'm glad we weren't on the air.
That's happened too.
Yeah, right.
That's happened to me, yeah.
Okay, so the music that you recorded for the Terminal 1 soundtrack, were those tunes that you played were playing in the movie, or how did you put together those tunes?
No, the picture inspired the tune. I played Killer Joe in the picture. That's the only tune I played. And after we did our part in the picture, I called the record company. I said, you know, this would be a good time to put out another CD since I just did this thing. I said, and the title should be as close as we can get without using his title, which was The Terminal. I said, his title was sort of general. Let's make our title specific. Let's call it Terminal 1. And that's how it came about.
Excellent. So do you have plans right now for another disc? Are you doing some recording now, or
No, we will be doing some probably in March or April. And what I'm doing is putting together. Do you remember a group called the Jazz Tet?
Mm-hmm.
I'm calling it the New Jazz Tet, and I've written some things that we will be recording, hopefully in March or April, and then do a tour throughout Europe, you know, in the summer and the fall.
Well, since you mentioned the Jazz Tet, can you first tell me the personnel for the New Jazz Tet? Have you put that band together?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The pianist is Mike Ladon. Bassist is Buster Williams. Carl Allen is my drummer. My trumpet will be Eddie Henderson, and the trombone player is, I keep forgetting his name. It's terrible. I hope he doesn't hear this. I'll have to tell you later. Oh, that's terrible.
Well,
Lord.
That's interesting because I was just reading about you playing with Curtis Fuller at the Kennedy Center.
Yeah, we play together from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so can you tell me then a little bit about the history of the Jazz Tet while we're talking about that? That
Sure.
was have been a couple incarnations of the Jazz Tet, the original one,
Right.
and then one I think in the 80s. Tell us
Later.
about how the first Jazz Tet came together.
Well, I met Art Farmer when he was playing with Lionel Hampton. I joined Lionel Hampton. I didn't stay very long, but during the time I was in the band, I met Art Farmer, who was playing trumpet with him. Quincy Jones was still there playing trumpet. Who else was there? Clifford Brown was there. Gigi Grice. Mark Montgomery was playing electric bass. Jimmy Cleveland was playing trombone. And after I met Art, well, when I heard his sound, I realized that his sound was different. Such a beautiful sound. And then eventually he left the band, and I didn't stay very long. And we were thrown together in circumstances sometimes, different recordings and commercials. And we liked the way each other played. And I thought, well, there's lots of quartets and quintets, but there's not really a sextet going. I'd like to put a sextet together, and I'd like to have Art Farm as my trumpet player. So I called him one day and said, Art, I'm thinking about putting a sextet together, and I'd like for you to be my trumpet player. And when I said that, he burst out laughing. I couldn't imagine, what the heck is he laughing at? And when he stopped, he says, you know what? I was thinking about putting together a sextet, and you were going to be my saxophone player. So we both started laughing. I said, well, come on by the house, in the apartment, and we'll talk about it. So he got his twin brother as the bass player, Addison Farmer, whom I used to confuse at the beginning, and Dave Bailey, the drummer. They played together with Jerry Mulligan. I was going to get the trombone player and the piano player. I got Curtis Fuller, and I told him about a young piano player in Philadelphia that he had never heard of, named McCoy Tyner. And he said, well, can he play? I said, yes. I played with him, and I said, he's fantastic. And that's how the first Jazz Tet came together.
And then after that band went its separate ways, you brought the Jazz Tet back together again.
About 25 years later, believe it or not. I never thought it would happen.
Mm-hmm.
But we did come together again. And the front line was the same, Art, Curtis, and me.
Mm-hmm.
And we had various people in the rhythm section, as time went by. Buster Williams was there, Peter Washington, Ray Drummond, Rufus Reed. We had different drummers.
So, do you particularly like that three-horn front line?
I do.
And what are the characteristics of that are interesting to you?
Well, with three horns, you can get more sounds than you can with one or two. It's not a big band, of course. It has its own sound. It doesn't necessarily have to sound like a big band. But with three horns, and use the piano wisely and the bass, you can get a variety of sounds that you wouldn't ordinarily get. And that's why I chose that. Of course, there's a septet and octet too, but then you run into financial problems.
Right. Always seems to be a big impediment is once you start getting more personnel trying to get everybody to a place and make sure everybody gets paid their due. Well, you had just mentioned Philadelphia, and that's where I think a lot of your youth was, and growing up there. And it's amazing to think how you had such even a jazz career even before you got out of high school with some of the people you were playing with and the relationships that you were building there. Can you tell us about some of those early days in Philadelphia and some of the people that you grew up playing jazz with?
Yeah, Jimmy Heath, for example. And Jimmy, we were all young. Jimmy hadn't reached 20 yet, and he put together a big band. And John Coltrane was there. We were together every day trying to learn what this Be-Bop, as they called it, was all about. And Ray Bryant was there, and Ray Bryant was very young. He was 14 years old, but strangely enough, anything that he knew, he could play in any key. Like Art Tatum, keys didn't bother him. And he was really a genius because he got all A's. He went into an academic high school, and he was always the top of his class. He could have been a surgeon, an astronaut, an attorney. He could have been anything, and he chose the piano. Yeah. And let me see who else was there. Well, some were young. Some hadn't really got started, like Lee Morgan and Bobby Timmons. But the Brecker brothers were there. They were kind of young. But Jimmy Heath and Johnny Coles and Philly Joe Jones and Percy Heath when he got out of the Air Force. And we were all struggling to get ahead and gain an understanding of this thing called jazz. And we left one by one, going to Mecca, New York City.
Yeah, was there something about Philadelphia at that time that incubated all of you musicians, or was it just kind of happenstance, do you think? That
happenstance and ineffable. Couldn't put any label on it. It just happened.
Well, I wanted to ask some of your recollections on the birth of bebop, because that seemed like a thing. It seems like great timing that you were coming up right at that time, and you had some experience in bands that were playing some of the swing and the big band music before that. Yeah. What did you think when you first heard Bird and Diz playing there in Philadelphia? What were some of the things that were going through your mind?
I thought John Coltrane and I were together. We thought we were going to lose our minds. We had never heard anything like that. We're not talking about a good performance. We're talking about music that we had never before heard. We were going crazy. We were effervescing inside when we heard Bird and Diz at a live concert. And of course we were like groupies, running, getting autographs and following Bird up the street, and John was saying, "Can I carry your horn?" And I was saying, "Why don't some of my friends walk by and see me walking with Charlie Parker?" No, none of my friends walked by. Oh yeah, that was fantastic. And then right in midstream, while we were trying to learn the other music, we hear this new music. So we had to change horses as amateurs in the middle of the stream. So we were really hard pressed to move ahead. And then we got a lot of opposition from the old traditional musicians who would play other kind of music, and they were steeped in it and didn't want to move into anything new. And they would say things like, "Where's the bass drum? You guys play like you got a mouthful of hot rice." I mean, that didn't deter us. Our skins were tough. We wanted to get ahead. We were bent on finding out what this, and I hated that term bebop. It was so derogatory.
Really?
You know, really should have been called something else. Or it didn't have to be anything else. As Miles says, I don't name it, I just play it, you know. But anyway, we were trying to learn this new music and dreaming about the day when we could be in New York and playing with people like Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker and Max Roach. It was a dream, but these were imperial dreams, and some of them came true.
Yeah, that seems like some of them did.
Yeah.
You moved on and ended up playing with Art Blakey, and
Yes.
I had read an interesting story that I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on about how when you met Art, he had a band, and you in particular, you felt like he could be doing much better, and so you worked with him to put together a new band, and the Jazz Messengers took off from there.
Yeah.
What was it about Art Blakey that made you think that he could be doing better? And did he at that time, did he already have a reputation as a great drummer? And what do you think was happening there?
Yes, he already had a reputation, but he wasn't doing anything to advance it, to take it further. And he wasn't making much money. And what he had was the axiomatic talent. He had that. And he wasn't parlaying it to anything. And I said to him, "You should be a millionaire the way you play." And I said a few other things, and then it surprised me what he said to me, because I was a nobody. He said, "Can you help me?" I couldn't believe he said it. And I couldn't believe what I answered him with. "Yes, if you do everything I tell you." He said, "What do I do?" I said, "Get a new band." Oh boy, that was something.
So you took control and
Oh, he gave it to me.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
that's-
So I got Lee and Bobby Timmons and Jimmy Merritt, and wrote some new stuff for him. Blues March came about because of him. I said, "You've got to have something that people can identify with you, rather than playing a drum solo at the end of a tune. Something that you begin with at the beginning, like you did with Straight No Chaser with Monk." I said, "But you've done everything there is to do." And then I thought, except a march, and then we both started laughing. And then I stopped laughing. I said, "Oh, wait a minute, a march." And he looked at me and said, "You've got to be kidding." He didn't want to do it. And I said, "Well, let's try it. Let me go home tonight and see what I can write." And I came up with this thing called Blues March. And he played it like nobody ever played it. Yeah, he made it his own.
Well, you've got been awarded so many different awards. Totally have earned all of those, like the NEA Jazz Master, and just recently a Mellon Lifetime Award. As you're moving forward in your career, what are some of the things that you're looking forward to doing as you move forward and continue on playing jazz?
I would like to think that I've got one foot in the present and one foot in the darkness of the future, trying to discover things that are there awaiting my discovery of them. Some people say to me, "What is the best tune you've ever written? What is your favorite tune?" And my answer is always the same: I haven't written it yet.
So you're still, and so composition still is something that you're intrigued with and exploring music in that way too.
Creativity never retires. It goes on and on.
Well, I totally appreciate you being here for Jazz Live, and thank you for coming in and chatting with us today. And best of luck in everything that you do going forward.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.